Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jenny McFarland, and with the Tucson Audubon Society, soon to be Tucson Bird Alliance. And we're going to be talking about the February 2025 Winter Grassland Bird Surveys with an emphasis on Chestnut-collared Longspurs. So this is our target bird for both the Cienegas survey, which is this Friday, and the San Rafael Valley survey, which is next Wednesday. And these two areas are both global important bird areas, and they were designated specifically for chestnut-collared longspur. That's the bird right behind me on my background, flying in a flock in Las Cienegas several years ago. They're really cool birds. They look like sparrows, but they're not sparrows. They're actually more close. They're the same family as snow buntings, so they're in that family, which is quite separate from sparrows, although they superficially do look and act quite a lot like sparrows, and hang out in the grassland. And they are the fastest declining bird species in North America. Shockingly, from the sense that so few people and even birders can sometimes be super aware of these birds, and they are very high critical conservation concern, which is why there's such a high priority for the IBA program, the global IBA program, as well as the Arizona IBA program. We did a ranking of our species of conservation concern, and this actually turned out to be the highest ranked bird. The fact that they are year after year, several years in a row, the fastest declining bird in North America is pretty darn troubling. And the grassland suite in general is the most declining and sort of critically threatened group of birds in North America. It's a real sort of under spotlighted problem, I think. But so we are lucky enough to have some really good wintering habitat for this bird, chestnut-collared longspur. And so every year we go out into these two IBAs and do our best to monitor their populations within these two IBAs as a wintering bird. So I believe everyone who's helping with the survey, if not everyone, nearly everyone, has done these surveys in the past. So we will be going over mostly sort of what we're doing this year, a little bit about how to tell a chestnut-collared longspur from the other birds, although I know this group is pretty experienced with that. And anyone who hasn't done these surveys before, which we have a few people, there will definitely be people on your team that have done it before. And I'd like to first go over a little bit about where to find the information for the survey. And then later today and tomorrow, I will be sending out more specific information for the Las Cienegas group that's going out this Friday and the San Rafael group going out next Wednesday. And then also team messages to specific teams so that you can communicate within your team. So if anybody wants to carpool or just sort of meet and greet each other, that will also be facilitated by me sending out messages to each team as a group message. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Share. Let's see here. Share screen. There we go. Okay. I want to share sound as well. Okay, here we go. All right, so the thing to do generally to get information for this survey is we keep it all on our IBA webpage. So you go to aziba.org and our internet's working down here. And then you go to survey resources. This is where I keep all the pages for each of the different survey efforts that we do throughout the year. And so this one here, the Winter Grasslands Chestnut-collared Longspur page, has all this information. It has some like videos from the past. So in the past we had done, and we may do this again in the future, but we're not doing it for this survey, where we're trying to sort out with a larger bird survey group, Bird Conservation of the Rockies. We're trying to sort out a good way to survey for chestnut-collared longspurs. They're very challenging in the winter in the sense that they get into these big flocks, which can facilitate sort of identifying them a bit easier. And if you know how to find them, can make it a bit easier. but it makes it difficult for more traditional bird survey methods like transects or point counts, which is what the bigger groups really like to do. It can the birds, their behavior in the winter, it works fine in the breeding grounds, and they do a lot of surveys in the breeding grounds on these birds that way, where they more space out in their own little breeding territories. But in the winter, when they get in these flocks, it just doesn't work well to do transects and point counts. And we tried it for several winters in a row. So anyone who's helped with that knows it doesn't work very well. And Bird Conservation of the Rockies has pretty much abandoned that as well. So we're still trying to sort out a good methodology. So in the meantime, we're going back to our tried and true methodology, which has been working quite well. So the webpage has some videos about what we've tried in the past that we're not going to be doing this year, but it also has some really good background on the longspurs. So if you don't know that much about them as a species, this is a really interesting little section. And they're really cool. They're really charismatic birds. And it just talks a little bit about the threats to their habitat and that they've been declining, and then has some nice pictures of them. But the main thing that's important on this page is the protocol. The fact that I have some resources here for like a wintering birds photos handout sheet, and I'll have a hard copy of that for each team ready to go. Some information on how to use Google My Maps, which will be important if you're not super familiar with the areas that we're going to be in. But this big link here, the PDF protocol. What I will again have a hard copy of this for each team in the field. But if you haven't done these surveys a few years a few years with us, then it is good to sort of review this. And one of the most important parts, there's two really important parts in this protocol, is it talks about the purpose of these surveys, why it's so important, the fact the birds are declining so much. And it also goes over some of their behavior characteristics. So this is a good photo someone got of some longspurs displaying the behavior that creates their really characteristic pattern. So when you have longspurs that are flying around in a flock, that are hanging out in a group, you do get this sort of popcorn effect that will happen as they fly. Once you see it, it is pretty distinctive. They also have a really distinctive call note. And that is also on the page here. So that web page where we have so the whole page for the survey effort, the Chestnut-collared Longspurs survey effort, does have some audio files of a longspur flock, which we'll listen to right now. And you can just listen to this anytime you want. Go ahead. And that's a really good recording of the characteristic sound that they make, that the longspurs make. And it's like in the wintering time when they're in these flocks and they're moving around. If you flush them from the grassland where they might be resting, because they do tend to just sit right on if they're going to sit, they tend to sit on the ground among the grass, like snow buntings. And then they might flush if you're walking sometimes, or how we most often encounter them is when they come into cattle ponds and cattle tanks to drink. They do drink a lot in the winter. They're eating almost 100% grass seeds, which are very dry. And so they do need to drink quite a lot to digest those seeds. So they come into the tanks pretty regularly. And that is the key to finding these birds is they tend to come into water. The water's almost like bait, brings them in. But sometimes just good areas, sometimes on the map for different teams, I'll say, check this area with a little symbol. And that means just sort of kind of as a group, walk around, because sometimes they just flush from good patches of grass. And it can be very useful to know this call, because when they fly up as a group, they do the characteristic sort of popcorn flight. And they have this call that's quite characteristic. And the reason we make such a big deal about that is it's a really good way to tell them from horned lark. Now, the thing is that horned lark will also sometimes, they like to sit on the ground too. They hang out at the tanks too. They look quite different if you get a good look at them. But if it's just a flock flying away, you sometimes don't get a good look. And one of the most significant differences is that horned larks let me just stop so you can see my hand movements. The horned larks will fly in a more, I don't want to say disciplined way, but they'll fly more like where they keep their line of motion as they fly. Each bird will keep their place in the flock as they move, almost like a school of fish moving. Whereas when the longspurs fly, they're just sort of, they're tumbling over each other, they're switching positions with each other. And this can have tremendous advantages for preventing aerial predators from getting them. So it is a defensive strategy of why they're moving around like that. But it's visually very distinctive, different from horned larks. So it's this sort of, we call it sort of like popcorn. We mean popcorn in a popcorn popper, like an old-fashioned air popper, where they're just sort of tumbling all over the place. And even in a flock in a distance, you can really see this difference of the way they move. Whereas most flock birds, when they fly, sort of stay in their lanes, each of their positions, and move more like a school of fish. And longspurs just don't do that. These chestnut-collared longspurs, they move around, switching positions with each other. When they come in to drink, they tend to, when they come into like an edge of a pond, the flock seems like it's not settling. They're constantly coming up and moving around and flying around. But if you watch really close, what's happening is some of them will come down and get a quick drink while the rest continue to swirl. And they're almost like providing aerial cover, like a confounding visual factor. If there was a falcon up there, you got all these swirling birds that are providing cover over the ones that are taking turns dropping down to drink. And occasionally they seem calm enough where sometimes they'll all come down and drink. I have seen that, but they usually don't. It's usually it seems like they give this vibe of being really nervous. I don't know, they're not, but that's how it's sort of, how it feels to us watching it, is that they're really nervous, but they're mostly just very wary of predators. So they're really careful about doing that. Sorry, I got to make sure I share sound. Make sure I did that right. Yes. Okay. So we also have, for comparison, horned lark, and you can listen to these as well. And it is kind of similar, which is why I have them here. That's a call they give a lot. That's not the most similar. The second one is the one that's the most similar to this one. And you can download these if you want to. So two-part call. This is the one horned larks do a lot. Now, when you listen to them several times, one after another, you'll get the sense that longspurs do this. I don't know how to describe it. To me, it just sounds more harmonic. It's got more tones in there at the same time. This is longspur again. So I've seen it described as like cheedle-dee, and it is a bit, but it's also just got a lot of tones going on at the same time, whereas horned lark is a bit more of sort of pure notes. So it takes some practice in the field, but it's definitely worth spending some time with that if you're not super familiar with it, or if you haven't seen them or heard them since last winter. Make sure you go ahead and listen to that, because it is really quite useful to know that call, because it's one of the best ways to identify them, because you don't often get a good look at the chestnut-collared longspurs. It's sometimes when they come and sit down at the edge of a tank, you can get a nice look, but that's pretty unusual. It does happen, but you can't count on it, and sometimes you have to identify them without that. So the protocol goes on to describe that this behavior of flying, and this is what's causing it, the fact that some are opening their wings or sort of falling like little torpedoes at the same moment. So it makes that popcorn effect. I have a good video linked in the protocol. This is from Matt Griffiths here, who's on staff. He, there might be an ad, let's say. Sometimes there is when I open this.
You'll be back! Emus can't help.
All right, yeah.
People customize and save with Liberty Mutual.
Right, so the video is very fast. So if you listen to that that video a few times and watch it, and it's a little, I was taken out here in our habitat too, so that's an Arizona video, and it's very good, and you can hear the cheedle-dee harmonic call in the background. All right, So for our protocol for the survey, so for each group, we're going to be, and I'll send a team email to each of these two efforts. But generally, for Las Cienegas, we're going to be meeting at 7:30 at the Empire Ranch, which is that public place that everyone has a nice parking lot and everything, has restrooms, has no water-free restrooms. And we're going to meet there, and everyone can team up, and you'll get your clipboards with all of your paperwork and maps and the data forms on them. And then we'll go off and do our survey. And for San Rafael, we're going to be meeting at the same time, 7:30, but at Gathering Grounds in Patagonia. And then from there, we'll coordinate ourselves, organize ourselves, and head out to the San Rafael grasslands. But and I'll be sending that a very detailed email to each of those two groups, and then some team emails as well. But the main thing we're going to be doing is moving. Each team will be assigned a route with areas that are highlighted, especially to check, although you can check other areas as well. Or if you see birds you want to check out anywhere, that's no problem. But I'll have areas called out based on past success of where birds have been found, or areas where tanks are. And I need each team to be recording, this is the general thing, to be recording all birds that they find for the day. And I always think of this as sort of like Christmas bird count style. So keeping several checklists is great, or if you want to do one mega list, that's fine as well. But keeping track of all the birds, so all the hawks, all the different sparrows, everything, because this just helps us monitor this important bird areas in general. And I suggest using eBird if you are familiar with that. It makes it a lot easier to do your list throughout the morning of just all the different stuff you're seeing. I've been doing some scouting, and I've been out and about as well, and it does seem like it's a pretty good season. There's a lot of sparrows around. There's a lot of birds in general around. And longspurs have been seen at both IBAs this winter. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be a fun morning, both surveys. But just keep a sort of Christmas bird count style list of everything you're getting throughout the survey morning. Now, the other very, very important thing is I have a special data form, and we'll go over it in a moment. I have a special data form for chestnut-collared longspur. Anytime you encounter chestnut-collared longspur, I need this data sheet filled out. We do map all of our longspur occurrences. And so what I need, and it goes over it, what I need is the coordinates for each time you encounter longspurs, approximately how many birds are there, and your approximate distance and direction from where the flock is. So if you're taking the coordinates, obviously, of where you're standing, but if the flock is, 50 meters to the north, you can put that on the data form, and that helps us, project the point to where it is. And then another really important thing is I do want recorded again the grasses of where we find longspurs. And I have a grass guide, which I'll show you guys. But the most important thing is layman's love grass, which is a non-native grass, and how approximately, and it's like huge categories, how much of it is occurring where the longspurs are. Spoiler alert, it's often, the longspurs are not often where there's a lot of layman's, okay? So they're very cued into native grasses. And also if there's a pond or tank, affiliated with where you're seeing them, like this photo here where they're coming in to drink at a tank. And then we're going to do a very simplified cattle tank pond assessment. So any cattle tank or pond I send you to specifically, I have a very simple, just takes a moment, data form to fill out. Basically, is it dry or wet? And we're trying to keep track of that from year to year now. We're not doing these transect surveys, and we're not doing any of that stuff. So that's going to be the main things we're focusing on, is cattle pond, a very simple cattle pond assessment, not the more complicated one I outline here, because we've done those several years. So we have that data now. We might do that again in a few years, like do it every so many years, but we don't need to do this every year. We have that information already. Towards the back of the protocol, though, we do have a nicely put together guide to grasses that we're likely to encounter in these two habitats, these two important bird areas. So it talks about amaranth, which is a native, but is a kind of a native weedy plant that is common near tanks. And then it goes through some of the native grasses. And then this page here is all about lamans and Russian thistle, both non-native plants. Russian thistle, often known as tumbleweed, and then lamans. There's some pretty good photos of lamans, and we tried to get good photos. And one of the biggest sort of, to me, giveaways of lamans, and it does have this sort of open panicle structure, but it does this thing layman's does where it can be at different heights year to year. It'll grow different heights. But what tends to happen is when you have a big patch of it, it all tends to be the same height. So it makes this real uniform, same height looking grass throughout its, where the patch it's growing in, which can be really distinctive. And then this goes through a lot of the other probable things like Sacaton, native grasses that are around. Now the grama, these ones here, these grama grasses are the favorites of the longspur. This is their favorite food. They really cue in on grama grasses, all the various different grammas, and especially blue. Blue is one they really, really cue in on. And lots of studies have found that that is their favorite grass. They also like things like this cane beard grass, which is up here, these bearded grasses. They like those as well, the cane beard grass. So I try not to make it too crazy. It's more a matter of how much of the layman's is around when you're finding longspurs. All right, so now I'll show you that form. So what we're doing is a just sort of a Christmas bird count style collection of all the birds you're seeing throughout the morning, as well as then we have this chestnut-collared longspur data sheet, which we were just talking about. Let me zoom in a little bit. And it's not, and I have it set up to save paper, that it is you can do 4 occurrences per page because there's going to be double printed for you. I'll provide all these sheets. You don't need to bring any data forms with you. I'll have this for you guys. But so it allows room here for 4 different occurrences. You don't need a different sheet for each one, but you're going to put the area, the route, and the date on the top of each page. And then it has this whole block is for an occurrence. You put the coordinates, the time, the number of longspurs. You check if it's an estimate or not, because sometimes it's an accurate count. You're like, oh, there's 16 longspurs because they're right here at a tank. Okay, cool. That's not an estimate. But if it's a big flock and you're like, oh, I don't know, 50, that's an estimate. Okay, so then distance in meters and direction. So you can do like, okay, 20 meters. And this is just, I understand it's going to be a total guess. That's great. Your sort of best guess is extremely useful information. If you're like, I don't know, that's 50 meters, whatever you think the distance is and the direction. You can use compass, like the degrees. You can use that if you have a compass app that will do that for you. Or if you're like, I don't know, to the north, that's also extremely helpful. And then this is really important too, the layman's lovegrass presence within 50 meters in all directions, as far as you can tell. So is there none, less than 10%, 10 to 30, 30 to 50. So I made them pretty wide swaths. Or if you're like, oh my gosh, this looks like all layman's, then that's 90 to 100. And then if you can identify any of the other grasses, you're like, gosh, look at all this grama. Go ahead and just write any other grasses that you can identify in the area. And then it has a nice big area for notes where you can describe any behavior. And then were the longspurs at a tank or pond. Now, when I say CCLO, that is just a abbreviation for chestnut-collared longspur. So this will have 4 places to fill this out for each of your occurrences. We're also going to be doing a very simple take form. And how this works is it's very simple. And you can put, I don't know, like I think 8 per page. So you're probably going to need maybe 1 sheet for this, maybe 2. Where you just put the date and what route you're on. So I'm team 3 or whatever your route name is. Then you can just put the name of the tank, if it has a name, many of them do, on the map, or the coordinates if it doesn't have a name. And is there water in the tank is what I'm asking, yes or no? And then any notes you might have, whatever. It could be notes, frozen, or cows at the pond, whatever you notice, there's room there to write some notes. But what we're really trying to keep track of year to year is which tanks have water and which tanks don't. Even in a dry year, like what we're experiencing right now, some of these tanks do have water because they put water in them with a pump or something like that. Now, the reason we try to keep track of that is just because it could help us understand what's going on with the longspurs and why they are where they are. Okay. All right. So I know I said we're going to take a moment here. Does anybody have any questions about the protocol itself before I get into Las Cienegas specific stuff and San Rafael specific stuff? Okay. Good. Okay. I'm trying to make this pretty simple. Oh, we got Susan Henry. Okay. Go ahead, Susanna.
I am wondering about the differentiating between the chestnut-collared longspur and the thick-billed longspurs, because in our little scoutings, we've seen some of each.
That is a good question. Yeah, and that can sometimes happen where they'll get in. And this also seems like it's been a good winter, there are some of these areas do have thick builds around. And a lot of it is just trying to get a good look at them if you can. The thick builds I find are a little more cooperative with being looked at. They tend to sometimes sit longer on the ground. They are often also associated with tanks. Now they don't, to me, when I see them, they don't move the same way as chestnut-colored longspurs. Their call is significantly different as well. So definitely, that's a good point. We should all try to make sure we listen to thick-billed longspur like on one of our birding apps before we go out, because it is a bit of a different call. They do have a significantly larger bill, as their new name implies, but they really do. They have a much bigger bill. They tend to sit a little more spaced out. They don't, to me, I never see them in as tight flocks as a chestnut collared. They're a little more independent. And also I feel like thick bills mix in quite a lot with horned larks. So when I see horned larks just sort of wandering around near a tank the way they will, looking for insects on the ground, the thick bills seem to have a very similar behavior where they're also walking around looking for food around the tanks. So their behavior is significantly different, and their call is significantly different. And then they also look different too. So that's a really good point. Thank you. Especially this winter, there seems quite a lot of them around. So let's make sure we all have thick-billed longspur in our mind as well for the surveys. That's a very, very good point. Thank you.
Should we fill out the form and just make note that they were thick-billed?
No, it's chestnut collared is the only one that should be on that form. So any thick builds you get can just sort of go in the regular birding list. Now you can't go, I mean, you can if you're seeing chestnut collards and thick builds and you want to go ahead and mark that, go ahead. But I don't map the thick builds the way I would the chestnut collards. They are our they're our target bird. The thick builds are not that common out here, but they're not declining. They don't have the conservation status, the same level as the chestnut-collared longspur. It really is the chestnut collards that are our main target. I do want to know about thick builds, and you can write that if they're at a tank, you can put that on the tank assessment so that it's with that particular tank. Or on your eBird list, you could put a specifics about, oh, they're at this particular tank or something. But yeah, the chestnut-collared longspur form is for the chestnut-collared longspurs. Okay. Thank you. It's a very, very good question. Thank you. All right. So I do want to just quickly talk about Las Cienegas and San Rafael and what the general plan is for that. Where is the right tab? Here it is. Okay. So we'll do Las Cienegas first since that one's coming up first. So for both of these surveys, I have been coordinating much closer than normal. There's been a lot more interest in these surveys than in the past. BLM has recently hired a very good biologist named Hannah, and Hannah is very interested in what's going on. So BLM is much more involved in the Las Cienegas survey this year than they have been in the past. They're very interested in the data. I've given them all the past data. They are being very open to sort of why this is important for Las Cienegas, and it's really great to know. So this year I do actually have what they call a research permit with them, with the BLM, and they're just a lot more informed and involved in what's happening, which has sort of slowed us down a little bit. But now that we've got all that sorted out with them, it's all good, and they're very excited these surveys are happening, and I'm very glad that there's more desire on BLM's end for collaboration. So how these maps are going to work is I'm going to create the teams. I'll get all this information out to everyone by tomorrow. For Las Cienegas, it'll probably be out today, of which team is assigned to which route. This is route 1, and it focuses on the north end of the valley. And for each of these routes, I have this little symbol of a little dude that's like got I don't know, like a mining, like a headlamp or something. And these are areas that I specifically want checked. But of course, you can check anything along the route. Those are just specific areas that need to be checked. And then I have this area. There's this prairie dog colony that needs to be checked for this.
Jenny, please share your screen.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Thank you. All right. I thought I did. Sorry. It's a problem with doing this with one screen. All right. There we go. Sorry. All right. So this is the Las Cienegas map. And there's now Las Cienegas is mostly public land. Okay, mostly public access. There's very little, and the areas you're not supposed to go in are very obvious because they're basically around people's houses. They do have some private carve-outs from the original ranches that make up this public land, but it's mostly very publicly accessible. So we have far fewer issues here. But so like this will be a team, the red route, and then the green and the blue route together make a team. So I'll be sending out very specific information about this, but this is the map everyone's going to have access to, where it has specific tanks marked that I want people to check. And it also has these little symbols of a person with like a headlamp. And those are just areas in the past where, just from experience of doing this over many years, we have had good longspur activity. So they do need to be checked. And then we have this route that sort of goes from north south through the center of Las Cienegas, kind of the main road through Las Cienegas that has some good areas to check. This is the Curly Horse route, which includes a tank that people have probably been seeing a lot on social media. This has the Smith Canyon tank, this one here, which is very likely to have longspurs. For the survey has been having them consistently, as well as some other areas to be checked. Even on the road in, there's some good areas that people do encounter longspurs. There's a lot of native grass in this area. Then there's the Davis pasture section, which is to the south. This is also very likely to have longspurs. The south end is more likely, but we also have some new areas we're going to check, and they are on the other side of Highway 83, but they are also public land. So this section of Gardner Canyon Road is actually maybe BLM going into then forest land. We're going to check this. There has been some reports of longspurs. And then Singing Hill Road, which is getting a lot of attention lately, and I think has good potential. I checked it out myself, and I could see them possibly being there, is BLM land. This first section of the road is BLM. So we'll be checking that as well. And I'll be giving that to the north team since they're less likely to encounter longspurs. It's not impossible. It has definitely happened with us. We have had them up in the north end, but not as consistently. So Las Cienegas is relatively straightforward when it comes to knowing where to go and having no issues with where one is going. So I'll be organizing the teams and sending that out today. So this is going to be, I think, good. I have been watching the weather closely. People checking the weather may have seen that there is some rain predicted possibly for Friday. They keep moving it back, and now they're saying the rain might start around 6 to 8 p.m. on Friday. So it shouldn't impact us, hopefully, for Friday. Fingers crossed. I don't want to tempt fate too much, but it looks like Friday into Saturday, like Friday evening into Saturday, there might be some rain. They are predicting some wind for Friday and indeed tomorrow as well, but it doesn't look too bad. And it looks like the wind starts kicking up around noon. So if we can try to wrap up by, noon, 1 o'clock, I think the wind shouldn't be too much of a factor. So I'm a little worried about that, but that's the problem when I have to schedule these surveys out. And then I don't know why does the weather focus in then on those dates? Not always, but sometimes. Okay, so Las Cienegas, it's the same routes is normal, and I think it's going to be good. And I have these areas specifically identified just to be checked in a more kind of casual way. All right, so for San Rafael, we have also been partnering a lot with various groups and landowners in the area. So San Rafael Valley has the distinction of being quite a lot of public land within the valley, but quite a lot of private land as well in this area. So San Rafael has been good. People on eBird are reporting longspurs being around, but and also a nice update, which is good to hear, is the road. There is a new road to Bog Hole. So I will have a team going up to check Bog Hole as well as doing this northern section. So that's great. And I've also apparently this new road route up to Bog Hole is going through some really good habitat. People think they've been seeing longspurs up there, so we're gonna check on the way to Bog Hole. So that's great. That's been closed for years, so that's really nice that access is back. And then I have a team going north south. We have been working with there's a new Friends of San Rafael Valley group that's been helping us contact landowners and get permission to go into some of these areas. So there's one landowner though that would prefer us not go in there this year. So we'll be respecting that and not going into a few particular areas where we have in the past. But this section here, these orange tanks and this area that team has had good success in the past, that is no problem. The landowner is very excited that we're doing the survey there and it's very interested in what's going on. So that's great. This middle section, though, where we've often had good luck and have kind of limited our access anyway from not going too far off the road, this landowner does not want us in there. So, but this area down here, this normal route that does Watuka Tank and Duquesne Tank, no problem. That's all on the Coronado National Forest. So there's no issues with that. But I have been working closely with the Arizona State Parks. And for the first time, we're going to be adding San Rafael State Natural Area, which is operated by the Arizona State Parks and owned by the state of Arizona, to the survey. And that's this area off to the west down here. And this is where the state natural area is. It's actually wrong on the Google map. The Google map here showing the San Rafael State Natural Area kind of center of the valley is not right at all. It's actually down here where I have this little house symbol. That's where the state natural area is. And I'll do a more detailed map showing this whole area right around the house is state natural area run by state parks. They know we're coming. They're excited for us to be doing the survey. And they have a part-time ranger now associated with the state natural area, which is brand new. That's never been the case in the past. And I will be having a team going into this area. It has the sort of kind of well-known historic house out there. It's a house where like movies were filmed and like Oklahoma was something. I went out and saw it. It's a pretty cool building, and the ranger will be out there, so people are welcome to drive up right to the house and sort of look at it and take photos and stuff. The Friends of the San Rafael people may be out there as well. They also are aware we're doing the survey next Wednesday, and they may be out there as well. And if they are, then they may invite people into the house, perhaps. I don't know if they'll be there or not, but they're going to try to be there. And so that's a cool opportunity. So there will be a team going out there anyway to look for longspurs. But if any other team wants to go check it out, that's fine. You're very welcome to go do that. And I will also explain that in the group message I send out to everybody. So I went out there myself and got accurate coordinates, because the coordinates on even the state parks website are very wrong on where the entrance is to this, where the historic house is and then the state natural area. Okay, so I will be sending out sort of specific information for each team and laying out exactly where each team is allowed to go and where they're not allowed to go. And I'm pretty excited that Friends of San Rafael is been formed as a new group. And they're also we're gonna be working together into the future to do some more public outreach events about the valley and showcasing the valley, and perhaps doing bird walks in the future and trying to get more people interested in how great the important bird area is, the whole valley, which has always been a challenge out at San Rafael, because it's so much of it is private land. But the landowners are now getting excited. So I'm really glad there's this friends group and that the state parks have been involved as well, and that we're working with them. So that's very promising to me. I'm really glad. And I've also been speaking with them about in the future doing a public IBA dedication event out at San Rafael to showcase the area and how great it is as Chihuahuan desert grassland for these wintering birds. And then in the summer, it's got a lot of really important breeding birds as well. There's a lot of cassin sparrows up there, bottery sparrows. So it's got a lot of significance as an IBA. And I'm really glad that we're finally getting some ground in terms of having a group that's helping us interface with these ranchers and landowners. So that's really great. And I'm also hopeful that the areas we're not supposed to go into this year, I have spoken with that landowner, and he just sort of prefers not this year, but there's hope that in the future we'll be able to go in there if this all, if he sees it going well with the other landowners. So a lot of it's liability concerns that they have, but hopefully that'll be different in the future, and maybe we'll be able to go in. But okay, so I think that's everything I wanted to cover on this video. And then I'll be sending out more specific information. But does anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So with the information that you sent out, there was that wonderful sheet on the winter sparrows. And I'm wondering if that's available at Audubon, laminated or not laminated.
Oh, the one where it's a grid?
Yeah.
Mostly text? Yeah, that's a really good document that Tim's put together. I will have printouts of that for everybody. That's a really good one. So what he's talking about is it's a guide, like a grid guide. You go through and it sort of shows you how to tell the different sparrows apart. It's really good. I know that was available for sale in the shop previously. I'm not sure at the moment, but Tim put that together and sort of donated it to the IBA effort and to Tucson Audubon. So I'd be happy. I'll include a few copies of that with each team so people can take them home. I don't have them laminated, but I
Okay.
also have the PDF available too, if anybody wants to have it printed out nicely. But yeah, it's a really good guide. And I know Tim is looking into like updating it. He mentioned that to me recently. And he's out of town right now, but if he updates it and all that, I'll make sure we get them for sale in the shop.
Well, the other question was thick-billed longspurs. What was that before? So I can look that up.
In terms of what I was saying about them.
Well, no, in terms of someone said it's a new name, and I don't.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So it's McCown's Longspur.
Accounts. Okay, got
Yeah.
it.
So a lot of the field guides are going to say McCown's Longspur, like any book will have McCown's. And the apps, though, because they can just update this stuff, are probably an eBird too is going to call it thick-billed Longspur, but it's the same bird.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that. I need to like make sure I say that. Yes. Thick-billed Longspur, McCown's Longspur, same bird. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm actually going to get the La Cienegas stuff out, I think in the next hour to everybody of the different teams and what's going on in the next couple hours for sure. And then this video will be sent out to everyone as well. And if anyone has any questions, just please go ahead and call me or email me. My phone number, my cell number now I have in my email signature. So yeah, just go ahead and text or call me or just email me if you have any specific questions. But I think it's going to be good. I'm a little worried about the weather on Friday, but the more I check it, the better it looks. So I think it's going to be good. And it's definitely now not going to rain as far as weather predictions go. Not going to rain on Friday, which before they were saying it might, but it might be a bit windy from noon on. So we need to try to sort of wrap up by noon if we can, I think, on Friday. Now the weather may improve the prediction, but we'll see. Okay. And then the weather for next week looks very good for San Rafael. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you guys coming to the meeting, especially those of you who have done these surveys many times. But I think this new sort of streamlined, simplified protocol, which is really just focusing on finding the longspurs if they're around, checking the tanks, doing the simple tank assessment of is it wet or dry, and then any notes that look relevant to you, is going to be a lot of really good information for this survey effort. So I really appreciate your help with this. And this is one of our most highly ranked birds. And now that I have all these relationships with the Friends group, with BLM, with the state parks, we should this coming winter have no problem doing the 2 rounds of surveys. What really delayed me was all the like submitting a summary of what you're doing and then waiting to hear back and here's your permit. Like, so I didn't want to sort of act without having and hurt these new relationships. So that's why we waited till February and just only have time to do 1 round. But this should be super streamlined for the future. And I'm really glad that I did this process with these groups, because I think this is going to really improve data sharing and interest and buy-in from the partners and landowners. And I think this is really good. And now that we're talking about doing like events for the general birding public and the general public, focusing on the value of this habitat, I think it's well worth the effort. So I appreciate all of your patience and all of your help with this survey. So, all right. So I'll see the La Cienegas crew on Friday, and then I'll see the San Rafael crew next Wednesday. And thank you so much. And you'll be getting more information from me via email. Any last questions? We're good? Okay, great. I'll see you guys all soon then.